Washington versus Michigan is giving us an elite scheme battle.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen today, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars, we've got a really fun conversation today because we're going to really dive into this Washington versus Michigan battle, this national championship rematch, which does not have nearly the same stakes as it did last time, but we don't care. It's going to be fun. And we got a lot of fun topics we're going to get into today. We're talking about Jeremiah Hunter, and could this be his best game yet this season? We're going to talk about the number one battle in this game, Washington's interior offensive line versus Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. But we're going to start in just offense versus defense as a whole here, because as a nerd, as the everydayers know that I am with all this sort of stuff, I'm so excited for the meeting of the minds that we're going to see on the field in terms of Jedd Fisch versus Wink Martindale, one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL for a long time, versus somebody who has run a really, really good offense here at Washington, hasn't gotten into the end zone, but done a really good offense here at Washington. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's just the irony of that statement is, what's the one thing that matters in football? Scoring and preventing
scoring points.
That's a problem that we're currently in here in Seattle. But no, it's, as you mentioned, I mean, Wink Martindale, it's you mentioned the name Wink Martindale, and most people already know, okay, you got a guy we're in for a challenge here. And then You talk about Jedd Fisch, and it's like, okay, no, we know Jedd can scheme open at the offense. We've seen it. We saw it in Arizona. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen degrees of it at Washington. We haven't necessarily seen the full arsenal at Washington. And to take a page out of your playbook, because, again, this is not a national championship rematch. This is, but it's not. It very much is, in the sense of this might be Jedd's national championship, like this season, because aside from the Penn State game, what's the other one on the schedule? And I guess Oregon, which... All right, I'm going to leave that one be. But aside from those two, like, which other, Jedd could say, hey, we beat the defending national champions. As we know, Jedd loves to sell. And we know Jedd can scheme. So this is this is a perfect opportunity for Jedd to just get the play calling right in every single phase. Not just in the first 20, not in the middle 40, in the last 20, all of it. Like, all the pieces are there, and we'll talk about the interior offensive line. We'll get there. But even the offensive line, like Max McCree played 69 snaps, no rotation against Rutgers, killed it. Why do you think I was beating that drum for 5 months? Come on, like
no, I'm sorry, no, I'm with you there. But when I look at it, I want to go a little bit beyond that though, because Wink has been one of the best in terms of scheming up the back end of a defense too, in terms of just giving coverages that, like, it's one of those things that just in terms of, giving coverages, giving looks that make life really tough on opposing quarterbacks. And I would say that for a long time in the NFL, the other person who was the best at that was one Bill Belichick. So I think that this is going to be a really tough game. I wouldn't be surprised if Will Rogers throws his first interception of the season in this game. I don't like making that prediction, but I think that's something that we might see. And when I look at what I see on film from Michigan and what this team is able to do on the back end defensively with, a guy like Will Johnson, especially, I'm just curious to see how Jedd attacks it. Where one thing that Jake Butt said when he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, shout out to Jake, Michigan alum, is that Michigan, when Jedd Fisch was the offensive, the play caller, doing all those sort of things, was that they never took a snap at a disadvantage. And that's something that I think Washington has done a really good job of this season, where there have been ill-advised play calls, and the play calls didn't work, but they're taking snaps at advantages. And against Wink, that's hard to do. That's really hard to find. And I think that's something that Jedd can find a way to, maybe not every single snap, but find a way to consistently, just work this scheme in the way he wants to. I think it's going to be a really fun battle.
And the reason why it's going to be a perfect battle in that regard, who's the best quarterback, the best type of quarterback, aside from a dual threat, to beat a Wink Martindale defense? A guy who can find all 4 levels of the field. Right. Left, right, middle, and deep. And Will can do it all. And I think that's why Will's the perfect quarterback for a Jedd Fisch offense. And I'm not saying it's the ideal quarterback, but it's a perfect one because he knows how to see the field. He's going to find the open guy. That's kind of been a little bit of his problem. He's missed some of the open guys at times this season because he's looking for Denzel or he's looking for Giles on a certain play. And I think if Jedd can kind of break that habit, that, because how many times have we seen Jonah or Giles wide open and they don't get it? And it's not necessarily all on Will because some of that's pressure coming in and things like that. But, when I look at Michigan's defense, and I mean, I know you mentioned his passing defense is pretty good. They're 11th in the Big Ten, or they're bottom 3 in the Big Ten in passing defense. Now, the top 3 in the Big Ten in rushing defense. And so it kind of almost feeds into that where, hey, if Jonah's not getting the ball on the ground, get it to him in space. Get Cam Davis the ball in space. Get Adam Muhammad the ball in space. How many dudes do you have that we can comfortably say, get him the ball in space and let him figure it out? You got 3, 4, 5 guys that can do that. And I'm not saying it's going to be an easy task, but there are certainly routes, no pun intended, to be found to break through a Wink Martindale defense.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you there. And I just, the one thing that I think isn't necessarily as big is the talent disparity, where when I look at it, Michigan has some really good players. So we get a lot of Michigan fans in our comments when these two teams match up. I don't want them to get this twisted. I'm not saying that any of the especially the standout stars that we know we're going to go in the first round of the NFL draft. I'm not trying to say they aren't good players, but I want to harken back to something that Jedd Fisch said on his Monday press conference, where one of the very, because I asked him about the red zone. He says, oh yeah, we turn a couple of these field goals into touchdowns, some of these other things. And all of a sudden we're 5-0. We're one of the best stories in college football because of all the new players, all the new coaches. And I agree with that. I wrote about that over on Huskies Wire. And I think when I look at this, I say it's because there isn't necessarily as much of a talent disparity, where both teams obviously have lost plenty. From last year, not last year's, it's still 2024. Time flies. It's crazy. But when I look at that matchup, it's not nearly the same. We all know that. And I think that Jedd and this coaching staff have done a really good job of putting the right pieces in place. And we see it on paper. We see a top 25 offense on paper. That offense put up 521 yards against Rutgers. The pieces are there. The execution, the coaching has not been, which is frustrating. But we know the scheme is there. We know the scheme works. And it's just a matter of figuring it all out, which I think is something that this Husky offense can do. Again, it's not going to be easy, but I think it's something that they're going to be able to do. And it's going to be a really, really fun battle between Washington's offense and Michigan's defense. But Lars, the number one matchup in all of that is Washington's interior offensive line versus the best pair of defensive tackles in the country, which we'll get you right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier, because Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is great news for anybody who's still looking for their tickets for this weekend's matchup between Washington and Michigan, the national championship rematch. Jedd Fisch said, obviously Washington only holds 70,000. He said he wants 75,000 in the stadium if possible, and there's going to be tons of great ways to find tickets, find deals over on Game Time, because with their all-in pricing, if you toggle this feature, it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And you get the seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And with the lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you with 110% of the difference if you can find a lower price somewhere else. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets at the Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Lars, we are very familiar with the work of Mason Graham and with the work of Kenneth Grant. They were tremendous in the national championship game. It hurts, but we need to say that they were tremendous. What this game is going to come down to is exactly what the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line in January was unable to do. and it's containing those gentlemen and finding a way to negate them. I think more so as pass rushers, where, you can find ways to negate against the run by running the outside, find a way to do that. Jonah's been really, really good at, bouncing off tackle, getting the outside, doing those sort of things. But when I look at this matchup, it's going to come down to our guard Memelar, probably D'Angelo Lee still going to start at center, but we're going to see Landon Hatchett in there as well. And Enoch Vimahai, who has played this group before. Are they going to be able to negate this pass rush duo? I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm looking here. I'm trying to find a path where it says 16, 15, 11, and 10 pressures for the Michigan's 4 highest defenders, and Mason Graham is in there. And to me, I don't know. I mean, Rutgers was a good test to say, can you run the ball? Right? Can you handle like a solid defensive front? Northwestern kind of similar in that regard. But as you mentioned, this is going from like AA, AAA to the major leagues. This is now, hey, but as you mentioned, Enoch's done it. And well, I'm not sure if he has done it because I don't think he's played against Michigan, and certainly not played a significant number of snaps against Michigan in a start in a game like that. To me, Enoch has been a guy this season. I think he's shown through 4, and again, you kind of, it's exactly what I said before the season when it's like, oh, well, how do you get a 4th, 5th-year guy from Ohio State who hasn't ever started? Is he actually that good? Yeah, he actually is that good. And here's the problem though. When you look at all the run blocking grades for Washington, none of them are good. Like I just took a quick peek and Kaleki Latu is at the top of that list, so I'm not going to look anymore. So the fact that tells you what you need to know. This is a significant challenge for Washington. And at the same point, this is where it ties back into the first segment. There's ways to scheme around this. Now, again, zone speed option in the boundary, probably not. But, there's ways to get guys the ball to where you can negate Michigan's pass rush. Is it easy? No, it's not easy.
Right.
But there are ways to do it. And I almost wonder, do you do more of a pass and get everyone to bite and then do it and then go to the run? Or do you try and pound the rock first, make them bleed, and then try and go to the pass if that doesn't work? And I don't think the former works better.
I'm surprised you didn't say this before I did, or we weren't thinking the exact same thing here. Where we saw it really early in the Rutgers game. We've seen it more and more and more. What do the Damon Williams packages look like in this game? There you go. We're on the same page now. What does that look like in this game? I'm really curious, where there is certainly something to be said for taking the starting quarterback out of the rhythm, all those sorts of things. And I certainly agree with those, where I like the Damon packages. I don't want this to sound like I don't. I really like when he's in the game. Like the read option they had near the goal line that picked up 10 yards. Fantastic play. Awesome play from Damon. And that's the electricity, the ability that he brings, where I almost wonder if we see more of that in this game. And the reason I say that is because it felt like every single play outside of maybe one where he had the completion, or I can't remember who it was two, in the Rutgers game. I feel like every single play was the read option. And it feels like with Jedd, it feels like there's always something else behind that in terms of looking forward, looking for something else. And that might be putting it on film for this week, where those packages come in and all of a sudden it's, it looks like the read option. No, it's play action. Play action is not a great idea against these defensive tackles, but booting, sprinting out, doing different things like that with demand are ways to negate that. And I'm not trying to advocate for a 2-quarterback system. Will has played more than adequately enough to keep this job, but throwing Michigan off the rhythm with somebody like Demand is something that could be very, very beneficial in this ballgame.
Well, so there's two things that I'm glad you made that point, because one, Jedd actually answered that question. When they bring Demand in, their mindset is it's another gap to account for the defense. It's an entirely new gap to account for. That's what Jedd's mindset is when he brings Demand in. Because as you mentioned, it can be a run or a pass. And I think the reason why they're still only bringing him in for 2 or 3 plays at a time is because as much as we love Damon as a runner, I'm not sure he's totally there as a passer just yet. Like, what's the farthest we've seen Damon throw? 3 yards to the left and the right? He hasn't thrown a downfield pass. Remember, it was the check down.
But that's not. But I agree with what you're saying. But we've seen the arm talent. We know that he's able to do that. You're right. It's different to do it in games, but I don't think that that's necessarily the thing where I'd worry about that.
No, I'm not saying that that's the only thing preventing him from staying in for multiple plays. And I think as he gets again, he 1 for 1 again last week. So I'm not thinking he's a bad passer. Let me be very clear. I'm not thinking he's a bad passer. I'm thinking the more he'll stay in the game, the more he can take those snaps because it can be a passing threat or a running threat. Where let's say you play Damon for 5 straight plays, if you're the defense, do you think he's going to throw more than once?
No.
So that's what I'm saying. There needs to be an element of Damon being able to throw on at least 3 of those plays. Now, he can still run for 4 of them, but if it's a play action or roll out a boot, whatever the case may be. And then within that, then you also have there was another point that I was going to make. Oh, yeah, 2 quarterback system. We've seen it work already this year once. Right. Muhammad, where Damon comes in and they when they had the play where it was Will pitching it to what was that? I forgot.
Was it the direct snap where Will came around? Yeah.
I was trying to remember how that play came about, but I remember there's 2 quarterbacks on the field, so that's what I remember. And so we've seen it happen. We've seen it work. The question is, do you pull that out of the game like this? Which I don't think you can.
Right, but so I'm glad you kind of finished with it that way because like that's a one-time thing. That's not a oh, we're gonna run this for 3 or 4 straight plays. No, you can't do that. But yeah, no, so I certainly see where you're going with that, and I don't disagree with that. But I just wanted to throw that out there as an option because you can get into the whole, oh, are you going to call an RPO sort of thing with this, where that's something that can certainly work with Damon on the field. But when I look at this, that's just something I'm curious about because it almost feel like we lost the plot, but I'm going to try to bring this around and make it full circle here. It's all about just finding ways to negate the interior. Where Michigan's got a good pass rush as a whole, but those are the guys that are the most concerning because those are the guys that can really wreck the game. When I think about it, it's all right. When I think about Michigan's back end, they've got some really talented pieces in their secondary. We're going to talk about the most talented one coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But it's just, all right, if you can find a way to negate the pass rush and just, the word we used in the graphic here is withstand it. If you find a way to withstand the pass rush, you're going to give yourself a shot. And that's really all that Will has shown that he's needed so far this season. He's still, top 5 in the country in completion percentage. He's still just saying, if you give me a shot, if you give me a little bit of time to throw, I will make a good throw. And he's done that all year. So it's just finding a little bit of time to do that. And that starts with negating the interior because there is nothing that wrecks a quarterback anything more than a strong interior pass rush. Because when you start hitting home with 4, again, as we saw in the national championship, things go south very quickly.
Well, as we saw in the Apple Cup, I mean, Wazoo won the offensive line, the battle in the trenches, where it wasn't by a mile, but you could see there was some offensive line struggles in that game. And so have you corrected those? Because again, Northwestern was fine. Rutgers was fine. Michigan's another town. Michigan's another level. Do you guys have it in yourself to pull it together for 60 minutes? It's not going to be perfect. It's not. We're not expecting, Washington to light it up for 500. Because if you look at Michigan's, stats this season, they're under 30 every single game. So if you can get to 24 points, which again, it's been the problem this season. They haven't gotten to 24 a lot. Like, right. You got to 24 against Northwestern. Yeah. And then again, I'm not counting the first 2. And that's it.
Sure.
So, you're there and your defense is putting you in the spot, but your offense has got to take some punches.
Yeah, and that's one of the things where if you can find a way to just negate this pass rush and whatever it is, I don't know how much they want to, because you talked about, just finding ways to get Jonah the ball out of the backfield or Adam or Cam Davis, whoever it is, keeping those guys to pass block at times is going to be really beneficial for this, but it's just, all right, do you want to take another guy out of the routes? Do you want to just leave the secondary one less person to worry about? So it's a really tough, and this is why we wanted to, lead with the scheme and lead with all these different things, where it's just, all right, this balance of, we want to make sure we can put as much pressure on this defense as possible, but at the same point, just negate this pass. I really just, I have to keep coming back to this terminology here. No, I'm sorry. You have something. Go ahead.
Jonah Coleman is UW's highest rated pass blocking player.
I can see that. Yeah. It's in terms of just the snaps and everything like that. That certainly makes sense, but that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. How much are you going to rely on him to do that versus, the guy who has the most 10+ yard plays from scrimmage this season? Like that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I'm just curious to see how that works out. Lars, we're going to stay on the offensive side here because this could be a really big day for Jeremiah Hunter, which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And I got to stick with it here. I know I've talked about it the last couple of days, but I am just so high on Josh Allen and this Buffalo Bills team. I've been really impressed with what they're doing. And I think that he still deserves to be the MVP favorite, even at their last loss to Baltimore. He's just played on another level. Patrick Mahomes hasn't done that so far this year, especially now without Rashee Rice. That's going to be a big loss for him. And Jaden Daniels, I think you should find a way to parlay these two together with some futures bets. You should go check out the odds over on FanDuel with Jaden Daniels for Rookie of the Year. You won't be disappointed. So Lars, Will Johnson, this is going to be some cutting edge analysis here. That this is why all the everydayers tune in to Locked On Huskies. Will Johnson, Michigan's cornerback. He's very good at football. He's quite good. I have a feeling that we're going to see a lot of him matched up against Denzel Boston because they loved leaving him out on an island against Rome Odunze. That was a really fun back and forth to watch when you go look at it. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that again against just inside Husky Stadium this Saturday, which is going to Michigan secondary as a whole. The numbers aren't great, but there's a lot of talent there. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for Jeremiah Hunter, for Giles Jackson. We saw Will Rogers really work Jeremiah in a lot against Rutgers, which was good to see. And I think this could be a really big day for Jeremiah Hunter.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why Will was able to find Jeremiah finally after 3 games, because we'd seen Jeremiah come in sort of like in spurts and in moments, but we never really saw it early consistently in games. And you could see, as you mentioned, Will was really trying to get him the ball early. But to me, just get it to who's ever open. Don't force it one way or the other. And I think this is a matchup that feeds in perfectly, where if Denzel is taken away, don't even bother looking. Just look to your second, third, and fourth read. And that was another thing I want to give Jedd credit for. I saw more 4 and 5 receiver sets or 3 and 4 receiver sets against Rutgers than I had all season. And especially early on in that game, there was a lot of 3 receiver sets. So there's plenty of guys that you have in that room to do it. If Will Johnson's going to take away one half of the field, you got Decker, you got Kalecki, you got Joe. There's a number of options that you can look at where when you're facing a strong defensive line, you got to get the ball out quick. Got to find your first, second, third read. So Jedd needs to make sure that Jeremiah is in one of those first 2 reads, because he showed every single time. Like, he was able to just get in those spots, get to the hole, catch, and take the hit. And, I mean, it's exactly what we thought he was going to be this season. It's been so perplexing why Jeremiah hasn't gotten more targets. I mean, I'm trying to remember what he's at right now. I think he's at 13 catches, I think I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16 for 201 and 1. Like, to me, but here's the problem. It's 34 for Giles, 30 for Denzel, and then there's a just drop-off to Jeremiah. And it doesn't need to be that way. And the other side of that coin is now Denzel's, touchdown machine. Giles only has 1. Jeremiah has 1. Like, everybody else has 1. And so it's like, I don't and that's the red zone play calling issue. Like, I don't understand why Jeremiah doesn't get more of a look or why somebody else isn't getting more looks. But this matchup really is one where Jeremiah could thrive.
I certainly agree with you where it's just a matter of finding a way to exploit matchups where Denzel has turned into exactly what we said he was going to before the season. One of the best receivers in the Big Ten. The numbers reflect it, leads the conference in touchdowns. And Michigan knows that. They're certainly going to find a way to tilt their coverage towards him. And I'm curious to see what they want to do with Giles and with Jeremiah, where it's, okay, we are going to just sell out to stop the run because we know what kind of player Jonah Coleman is. And just, take our chances on the back end. And I feel like the way Jeremiah has been utilized this season could play right into what Jedd Fisch wants to do, where it's okay. Yeah. Now that, Sam received, he got his most catches of the season last week against Rutgers, where now when we're looking forward at this, it's okay. Now that, defenses might not necessarily, they know what kind of player he is, but he hasn't gotten the targets that, he was used to seeing at Cal last season. Maybe defenses are saying, all right, well, maybe he's not being utilized as much as he should be. Maybe he's a little bit of a decoy. We might not necessarily need to pay as much attention to that because when they line up in this, the read is, Denzel first, then Giles, and then they're going to look towards Jeremiah. So maybe this is a week where some of that changes up and it's Jeremiah is going to be the first read on a lot of these plays, especially with Will Johnson patrolling half the field.
Yeah, well, the thing is Jeremiah is averaging a first down per reception. Right. Over a first down per reception. So to me, it's, it makes no sense because when you look at Arizona's offense where Jedd was down there, you had Dorian Singer, McMillan, XY, the list goes on, and Tanner McLaughlin at tight end. You're catching 70 plus balls. So it's not like Jedd's not able to find 3, 4, 5 receivers.
Right.
But for whatever reason, he has it at Washington. And I think it's partially on Will and it's partially on Jedd. It's a 50-50 split because Will's the one throwing the ball. Jedd's the one calling the plays. Whatever is preventing them from getting more guys the ball, to me, this is the weekend where because we saw it early on against Rutgers where they were intentionally trying to get Jeremiah the ball. If Will Johnson is lined up against Denzel, Jeremiah should get the first 3 targets.
I'm with you, yeah.
And here's the thing. If for some reason Will Johnson is shadowing or lined up against Jeremiah, then, well, we all know where that ball's going. But, right. If that's the case, that's a good problem to have. We both know it's Will versus Denzel, Will Johnson versus Denzel Boston, which is why you have so many other guys to get the ball. And also, another Michigan man, Giles Jackson,
I've been waiting for you to do this, man. I've been waiting for you to just take your agenda here.
Again, the agenda has been. That's the thing about the agenda is because the Northwestern game where the retreat came to an end. But even again, I think Giles had what did he have last week? He had 3, 4, 5 catches last week, something in that. It was not as many as I thought he would have. Let me put it that way, because Giles 7 for 59. Okay, not bad, but it's 3 for 16 after that on the heels of a 8 for 162. But he had 10 from 98. So Giles can get open. I think it's a matter of getting everything in sync, which is kind of a problem when you're facing a disruptive defense like Michigan, and especially defensive front. That's why I said it's imperative for Jedd and Will to get on the same page starting on Monday, because you're going to have those answers by Thursday. They can't come third quarter Saturday. You already got to have those answers, and it's a tough task, but I think if anybody is going to be benefiting from this, it's going to be Jeremiah and Giles.
And that's one of the exciting prospects of this game is let's see how that battle plays out. Because, as we've said, Washington, they had 521 yards of offense against Rutgers. Rutgers is a good defense. Michigan is better. Michigan is much better, but it's just a matter of they found a way to scheme up a really good plan of attack against a solid defense. Now, the whole question is, can you do it again? And what's that going to look like? And Lars, with that being said, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all every day who's tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And thank you so much for making Locked On Huskies your first listen today. Now for your second listen, find Locked On College Football. From NIL deals, never-ending conference realignment rumors, our guy Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football on YouTube, wherever else you listen to your podcast. It's also down in the description below, so you can go check that out. And make sure to, if you were really interested, we're dropping stuff over there as soon as, hear it, all that sort of stuff. Check out our Locked On Huskies Insider program. The link to that is also down in the description below. You get a free 2-week trial there, and after that, it's $4.99 a month. We got so much fun stuff over there. We're dropping breaking news as soon as it happens, rumors, game day stuff, anything and everything under the sun. You also, because it all goes right to your text message inbox, and you got the opportunity to text back with us, ask us any questions you might have. We're going to be doing another exclusive Locked On Huskies Insider Q&A soon, which is something that you only get the link to. It's an unlisted video on YouTube if you're a Locked On Huskies Insider subscriber. That being said, again, there's a 2-week free trial. After that, it's $4.99 a month. So give it a look, check it out, see if you like it. We're always finding ways to make sure that improves however we can. And with that being said, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. You have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Thursday.